What's up, Buttercups? Welcome to Mean Age Daydream with me, your host, Brian McWilliams. Just checking my sound settings here. My microphone likes to reset itself down to lower volume constantly. There we go, a little louder. All right, welcome to the show, guys. Thank you for joining me once again here on this odyssey of politics, comedy, and, of course, culture. I want to remind you that we have new hosts on our Lions of Liberty network, the Lou Perez podcast with comedian Lou Perez, who is currently on tour with Kid in the Hall, Scott Thompson. You guys should know that show. It's iconic. It's where I got a lot of my sense of humor from growing up. He is doing the Lions of Liberty network. So his show is now on Tuesdays. I am on Wednesdays, of course. And Brian Nichols is now on Thursdays. Yes, we have a full cadre of your favorite podcasters all in one happy network right here. And also we have a new show, The Politics, because politics, right? The bloodsuckers, they're all bloodsuckers, guys. I'm going to play for you the intro for that show because I dig the music. That's going to be every other Friday. We did it last week. We're going to be doing Meme Wars behind the paywall now at patreon.com/Lions of Liberty or lionsofliberty.locals.com. But here's a taste of the Politics intro song because it's a banger. I think it works.
Let's begin.
Listen carefully.
Tell me that isn't rad. it's the best. Listen carefully. It's old school hip hop, baby. Anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in. Let's get right into it. Man, what an entertaining week it's been so far. David Hogg, as he said by the in the title of this episode, a hog to the slaughter. David Hogg, the annoying as hell skinny turd that came to prominence as an outspoken darling of the left because, of course, he was part of the shooting there, the Sandy Hook. He came out and has been stumping against guns and for super leftist, DNC nonsense for years now, and has been propped up through the media, through the party, to the point where he, I don't even think he's 20 years old yet, as a youth, somehow managed to be voted into vice chair of the Democrat Party. Now, when this happened, I said, this is the worst thing that could happen, especially for a party that has a problem with getting men attracted back. Like the DNC has been bleeding men left and right. This is because of their policies, which have been anti-male, anti-white male, especially very much embracing the stance that the patriarchy is the problem and the white people are the problem to all of the world's issues. Well, predictably, that drove men away. Being told over and over again that you are the problem, despite what you might think or do, and intrinsically you are a racist and a bigot and a sexist, which is what the Democrats have been running on for quite a long time. Well, it tends to rub people the wrong way. And so men fled en masse. David Hogg going out there, this whining turd, and again, not exactly an embodiment of a manly man. And look, and I get it. You're David Hogg. You're not even a man yet, right? You're over 18, but let's be honest, you grow into malehood at a little bit of a later age. You start getting your bulk and your wits about you. There's a reason that women tend to go for a little bit of older men. And David Hogg's the perfect example of that, right? He is a skinny, whiny turd. Now, Hogg got in this position through the voting process, right? They elected him. They voted through. But turns out there was a snafu in the voting. Now, whether or not this is a real snafu is the question, because it was brought to the forefront just recently by, a woman named Dylan. Let's see. I can't find her full name here. So anyway, this lady who had run to try to, not Dylan. I'm in the wrong story. Apologies, guys. This lady who had tried to run for the vice chair position. What is her damn name? Kaylin Free, an attorney from Oklahoma who failed to secure a vice chair position in February. She's also, I believe, Native American. She filed saying that the Democrats had broken their own rules by combining two questions. This is a convoluted and stupid argument. Two questions into one vote. and that somehow that had violated the rules that the Democrats had put into place by, quote, unfairly benefiting male candidates, as members were required to vote for at least one man to maintain gender parity. I'm not a scientist of Democrat processes in voting. All I can tell you is they're very stupid. So this has now come full force to bite David Hogg in the ass. I mean, hoist it on your own petard, right? There's no better definition of that than watching David Hogg get ousted over this, which is essentially, they're arguing that this is a matter that has to go back. It's a parliamentary issue. And that's why they were able to strip him in an evening session by the, I guess, the Democrat committee, strip him of his vice chairmanship over this ridiculous gender-based rule. Now, you would be foolish to believe that this is the reason David Hogg is actually being removed from the position. There's no way that's the reason. He was voted in there when the media loved him, when he had all this momentum. Well, it turns out David Hogg has been out there being very outspoken about the problems with the Democrats. And just coincidentally, guys, you know, it's like when you walk outside and a bird shits on your head. Who knows? It's unpredictable when birds shit and where they shit. Well, this was a very predictable shit that hit David Hogg right in the middle of his little wuss head, because he'd been out there talking about how Democrat establishment figures had to be primaried and how they would be primarying them because they're old and out of touch with the modern progressive movement. This pissed a lot of people off. David Carville being one of them. And like David Carville, he's been interesting because he had, he was obviously part of the machine for a long time. James Carville, not David, James Carville. He's old Louisiana goofball, but really had been himself very critical of the Democrat Party, had been out there talking about how the Democrats have lost touch with their base, but at the same time has been attacking David Hogg, Hogg himself has been out there saying the Democrats have been out of touch with their base, and specifically about the mail issue, which is funny coming from David Hogg. David Hogg was just on Bill Maher talking about how the Democrats have to realize that young people want to go out and get laid. whoever would sex up David Hogg, God knows what kind of people they're attracted to. Point being here, David Hogg goes out and makes the cardinal mistake of criticizing establishment Democrats. David made the mistake of thinking that because he was elected in his position, that he somehow still had power within the party. And he has been very quickly disabused of that notion, right? He has been now taken out to the back, butchered, and we're now watching the Democrats fry his pork belly Korean barbecue style on the grill as he flips around, tells people, oh no, Carville had taken it back. And no, that's not, I'm not really what I meant. You're done. You're done, David Hogg. And because we know how the machine operates, especially when we talk about access media or corporate media, we talk about the control the Democrat Party has. I mean, think about all of the videos that have been compiled with Democrat operatives across the spectrum in mainstream media, literally saying the exact verbatim. Yes, Tim that's watching it is a hog roast. Saying the exact thing verbatim when it comes from the DNC. Well, David Hogg is about to be unpersoned. It's funny because David Hogg himself has gone out there and talked about how the Republicans were depersoning, how Trump was depersoning people, which is nonsense. David, it was nice knowing you. You better find something else to do with your life. Change your name, put on some weight, maybe hit the creatine, I don't know. So just completely reinvent yourself. And I was thinking about this because, Dave Rubin, who, of course, I'm friendly with, has been on the show several times. Dave Rubin went from being on the Turks, right? The Young Turks, which is a very leftist show, even though even Cenk Unger has come around to criticize the Democrats. And of course, his paramour, the lady on the show that's kind of attractive, has also now become a target for the left because she has called out the left's nonsense. Dave Rubin got convinced by Larry Elder and has become a real big fan of Thomas Sowell. And for a while, I would say Dave is libertarian-ish, but of course is still very much in the MAGA camp, very much a stump for Israel. It'll be fascinating to see if David Hogg now gets transitioned. Nothing gets people on the side of libertarianism or conservative faster than seeing what the people that you thought were your friends, were your allies on the left. Oh, you're waking up now, buddy. You're seeing that the power is not with you. It is with a very small cadre of elites within that party. Look what they do to Bernie, but Bernie's such a piece of shit. He doesn't go. He'll go out there and still keep stumping because Bernie knows that's where his butter is breaded. Or his bread is buttered. Sometimes you tart out in the old skull here. Bernie wants to go and make money for Bernie, right? That's his career. He knows nothing else. So he's not going to leave the party. David Hogg now is going to be in person. And you're going to see, I guarantee it, you're going to see David Hogg make a change. You're going to see him react like so many others have been when they get shunned, when they get canceled, when they get betrayed by the Democrat Party, which again, it pretends to be the party of morals and righteousness, and it is neither of these things. It is a party of narcissists. It's a party of opportunists. It's a party of people that pretend to have empathy, who really hate you and want to prop themselves up, want to force you into their way of living and their lifestyle, and do not give a shit what you think or to hear any other viewpoints. Well, welcome David Hogg to reality. Looks like, man, you were a pig in shit, and now you're a pig in shit. Anyway, highly entertaining. I'd like to thank David Hogg for giving me my moment of zen. It's hard to describe the joy I feel. All right, moving on from the Hogg show here. So Donald Trump, some interesting things, right? Good and bad coming out of Donald Trump world. So, first things, Donald Trump has been on this tour of the Middle East. He went to the Arab Emirates. He went to Qatar. He went to Saudi Arabia. Now, you'll remember the iconic photo of Donald Trump holding the glowing orb, which was ridiculous. And from a public relations perspective, I don't know why he took that photo. This time around was very interesting because he just got gifted this $400 million airplane from Qatar. And of course, the Democrats and other people are saying, oh my God, you can't accept this gift. Look, I understand there's some issues taking the plane. I don't know, scan it for bugs and spy things, give it the once over. But at the same time, Boeing, which is supposed to be responsible for all of our aircraft manufacturing, has shown itself to be completely inept and incapable, right? From making fighter planes to making regular planes. Apparently, a new Air Force One was not going to be available for at least another 2 to 3 years because Boeing is a company that is fucked. Frankly, it'd be nice to see somebody else try to step into American aerospace. Maybe that's going to be Elon Musk. If you can build a rocket ship, you could probably build a plane, Elon. Get on it. But point being, he goes on this tour. And I can appreciate what he's trying to do by getting these investment. Saudi Arabia, I think $600 million, could be up to $1 trillion. Same thing. We're supposed to see the UAE and Qatar also, and maybe Dubai invest hundreds of millions of dollars in America and building plants here and infrastructure and investment, whatever. Great. Right. As long as it's not buying up land, Chinese style, probably a good thing. I'd much rather see a president doing that, fostering trade, fostering investment, than going over and making military deals with people. The question, of course, is always, what is the flip side of this? And we don't really see that report coming through, do we? We always see, the investment, great. What did we promise in return? Are we going to go ahead and allow the Saudis to keep going through and doing bombing runs in Yemen? Are we going to keep fostering those relationships? Are we going to keep supplying their tankers and their planes and everything else so that they can essentially create another style of genocide similar to what's happening in Gaza? And we'll get around to Gaza in a moment, in Yemen, and create, cholera throughout the entire population. That's the question. And we don't know. And I'm sure there's some of that in there. But on the surface, at least, is doing the things I would want a president to do. And to reemphasize this, Donald Trump does not represent me. He should not represent you. No president should represent you. You're an individual, and you should not have your identity tied up in what Donald Trump does or doesn't do. I feel I need to say that for people who are on the MAGA side and on the side of the Democrats or libertarians, for the most part, should know this already. Although the people that were adamantly in the Chase Oliver camp maybe didn't get the message. So the thing that stood out from this trip was that Donald Trump, when he came into office, we had criticized him from a party perspective for the Libertarian Party. I myself criticized him for being a honk for Israel, right? Continuing the funding. Israel's our greatest ally, but we know they're not. I'll reemphasize that they are our greatest threat in many ways. They are our greatest cyber threat. They hack us more than anybody. That AIPAC wields way too much power, that they have control over a lot of politicians that they shouldn't, that they have attack dogs that they will unleash to influence American politics, and for some reason do not have to register as a foreign entity. It's ridiculous. That being said, Donald Trump goes on this tour, and this is after having met with Netanyahu, and apparently things didn't go that great, skips over meeting with Israel. That I like. That I like. The fact that Israel-U.S. tensions are being played out on a main stage here for the world to see makes me happy for a couple reasons. Number one, we just saw the defeat of this insane bill that was put forth by, I don't know, the greater assholes in the House that would have tried to punish Americans for taking part in boycotts or choosing not to buy products and voicing support for boycotts of Israel, which of course is undergoing bombing campaigns and what I would argue is a human rights issue with their treatment of Gaza. Think what you want. That's my stance. So we got this bill defeated, knocked down. Great. At the same time, you've got Donald Trump apparently disagreeing on Gaza, being upset with what Israel is doing. Great. Love it. Let's try to rein that in. And now you have him skipping this relationship, skipping this meeting. The further distance we could put between us, having this completely, I don't know, you can't even call it symbiotic. I mean, I would call it a parasitic relationship that Israel has for the United States, because no one can explain to me what Israel actually does for the United States. I'm sorry, I don't know what they do for the United States. You can't tell me that somehow the stability of the Middle East depends on Israel when Israel's a prime factor in why the Middle East is destabilized. You can't tell me that they're somehow providing us with military support when we give them all of their military armament, when our funding pays for half the money that goes towards buying the military equipment there, and that we're somehow linked. If something goes shitways bad, we're now going to be coming in there to bail them out. What benefit does that bring to the United States? Zero. And yet, this relationship continues and persists. Why? Well, because of what I was talking about earlier. The political levers of power, AIPAC, etc. So split it up. And what we're seeing come out from the official channels from the Donald Trump camp as well, he wants to focus on business issues and investment and America, building up America before we talk about Israel. Good. That's the way it should be. It's going to be curious to see what happens next. I would love to see some behind the scenes pressure being put on Israel with this very public display of, hey, step to the side, Junior, we'll deal with you later. Hopefully this is a long-term play, or maybe even better, a short-term play to force Israel into a ceasefire, a forcible, peaceful solution. And let's not forget, this also comes on the heel of Donald Trump voicing support for a standalone Palestinian state. Now, I just saw that headline and I've not looked into it deeply. I don't know if he's gone into it deeply, or if this is just a Trumpism. He throws out a lot of Trumpisms, saying things here and there. But if that's the situation, that's a real rift. Because as we know, Israel does not want that. One could argue, and with very good evidence, that Hamas was created by Israel and funded by Israel in order to completely undermine the creation of a standalone Palestinian state, and that this was the argument that the governments can't be in there because Hamas is in there, and now there's terrorists and this and that. This is to undermine the efforts by the other factions in the country that are a little bit more stable. So I don't know. Buckle up, man. It should be an interesting ride. And with Donald Trump, and this ties into the tariffs, which we'll talk about in a minute too. Donald Trump is such an odd bird to try to nail down, because I don't want to give him too much credit. Obviously, seeing his first presidency, which I acknowledge was undermined by clearly the forces of the deep state, with Russiagate, with all these created and fabricated scandals, with the Democrats impeaching him over not giving Ukraine much, just absurdities. It was undermined. So I don't know what it could have been otherwise, but still, he made so many bad decisions with his appointments, with some of the policies that he created, that I know that there's that lurking. The question is always, has he learned from it? And now it's with these tariffs, right? We're seeing the tariffs get put on all these different countries. They come to the table, they negotiate. A lot of these other countries have made deals. A new deal with the United Kingdom. I'm sure there's a new deal with Canada forthcoming. A China, moratorium, not 90 days has just been presented, and I think we're going back now to China putting 10% tariffs on U.S. products and us putting 30% on China products, which I believe is essentially where it was before. Maybe it's still slightly higher. I'm willing to give him the benefit of some time and see where these things are going. If it turns out that he wins this tariff battle, then maybe I have to rethink my stance on tariffs, which I've been adamantly against. And I still think a lot of them are very, very stupid. This entire tax on the film industry, I think, is very stupid. I think it's going to be counterproductive. I think there's, putting tariffs on something is not the answer to this. Reducing taxes and the onus on filmmakers to create content here is the answer to that. But at the same time, I could be wrong. I'm not, maybe this is why I'm a libertarian and not a leftist. I'm not a narcissist I am a narcissist, don't get me wrong. I'm not a narcissist at the point where I cannot be wrong. I'm not going to justify my being wrong in any way, shape, or form. I'm just going to own it. And if I am wrong on tariffs, which again, people have said this is a negotiating tactic, I understand that. If I am wrong and he gets what he wants and people reduce these tariffs and it is short-term pain, emphasis on short-term, then I will fully say it worked. In this manner, it worked. Tariffs in the long run, I still think are completely idiotic. Having eternal tariffs is idiotic in a marketplace that should be open, and you should be able to create marketplaces that basically fill inequality. I cannot talk today. God, my brain. Inequality or inefficiency within marketplaces. Not everyone's going to be able to create the same goods at the same time, at the same price, and everything else. There's just not a possibility to do that, and the free market will fill those gaps. Tariffs simply fuck that. Okay. So, on to the tariff situation a little bit deeper. When we see right now, we're seeing this investment get announced from all these different nations. When it comes to China, I think one of the big questions too on how these tariff negotiations work out also ties into the debt. Because China owns a hell of a lot of our debt, as does Russia, as do a lot of other nations, but China predominantly owns a lot of debt. Their economy is slowing down, goes to shit. So they're enticed to come to the table and negotiate these tariffs. But at the same time, they do wield a larger cudgel than people think when it comes to our debt. And this comes at the same time, coincidentally, when Donald Trump has just announced this plan, right? One big, beautiful bill. So this one big, beautiful bill gets announced. And this is supposedly going to be a large tax cut, which usually I'm all for tax cuts, right? I hate taxes. I hate taxes more than anything. They are theft. And as we have many t-shirts, go to lionsofliberty.store, t-shirts that read taxation is death. Because what does the government use your money for? Well, funding the over $1 trillion military industrial complex, bombing people in your name with your country's flag flying on the side of it, and fucking murdering women and children, which happens constantly under the U.S. banner in nations that you don't even know that we're in. Taxation is death. But that being said, and Thomas Massey just voiced this very recently on my friend Matt Kibbe's podcast, Kibbe on Liberty, which you guys definitely should check out. You cannot increase the burden on the American population by continuing to fund all the things that we fund, continuing to spend even more than under Biden at the time being, by the way. We're actually spending more money despite these proposed cuts by Doge, despite the money that they're finding, which I'm sorry, I appreciate what they're doing with Doge. Even if it's not in the practical cuts, exposing the fraud, the grift, the complete inefficiency, the stupidity of government and how it spends its money and just how much fraud is out there and waste is out there in these idiotic projects, that's all a good thing. And that goes towards shifting the Overton window to where we need it to be, right? With transparency and people waking up that the government does not have your best interests in mind. This is a cookie jar, which every asshole has got their hand in trying to get as many cookies out as they possibly can. But we have so much money being spent that to now introduce a bill to cut taxes is, as far as the latest projections go, going to increase our deficit and our debt by something like $2 to $3 million a year over 10 years. So we're looking at $30 more trillion in debt over a 10-year period at a time when our, historically, guys, every great empire has failed, and they all have one thing in common. Well, two things, really. Empire building and overexpansion. But the number one link is that all of these were basically dependent on fiat currency and debt. They got into debt and debt and debt, and eventually that collapsed on itself. So it's just unsustainable. You can only tax the population so much, or you have to increase the currency so much that eventually it collapses on itself regardless. We are going down that path. And I really, honest to God, thought that Trump got that. I thought that Doge and all these cuts were designed to erase and reduce spending. And yet we see Donald Trump stumping for people to vote for the bill to continue funding all these things. But this is why he threatened to primary Thomas Massie. And Thomas Massie's not going anywhere. But this is why, it's like for every time, this is why I have so much trouble giving Trump the benefit of the doubt with these things, is that every time I think he gets it, he goes and proves me completely wrong that he doesn't get it with these, all the little things that are done correctly, right? Like there was just an executive order he signed. And look, I have problems with executive orders, guys, but I'll just take the good when I can get it, even though if they're not codified, they can just be erased by the next president. He just put an executive order out there about over-criminalization of federal regulations. Great, right? And Donald Trump on regulations has been fantastic. Get rid of the regulations on drilling. Get rid of the regulations on small business, everything. Get rid of every single one of them. His policy of getting rid of 10 regulations for every one and put into place is fantastic. These are the good things. Hopefully those little things will add up to something big. But the problem is it takes so many of those to erase the amount of damage done by a continuing resolution that funds everything with no fucking cuts. And if you don't get that, do you get any of it? Like, it's like when you see, let's say it's kind of like watching a Bill Maher, right? It's like watching a Bill Maher complain about the Democrat Party and rip them apart and get so many things right on all these different issues. And then he goes, but I'm still going to vote for the Democrat. Like you're adding the little things up, man. Why can't you get the big thing? That you have to stop doing the big thing, or else all of this is fucking for nothing. And that's what I don't get. And I just don't know what's happening. And look, it's early, right? It's 90 days. What is it? 110 days, 120 days in. But man, it's frustrating. Frustrating and entertaining. All right. Speaking of things that are frustrating and entertaining, Gavin Newsom here in California, my quote home state. Of course, I'll always be a Philly boy. But my home state of California has two different things that are batshit fucked. Number one is a bill that was proposed. Hold on, let me bring this up real quick so I can tell you exactly what the bill is. So California AB 1187, and this bill has been put forth, which essentially would demand that any gun owner in California has to regularly, I think it's every 2 years, go through a mandatory gun training. Now, on the surface, you'd say, well, yeah, people should have gun training, right? That makes a lot of sense. You need to know how to use your firearm. Yeah, I agree. You should know how to use a firearm to buy it, and you should be able to train yourself up. The problem is California is definitely introducing this because they want to try to clamp down on guns. They want to try to take people's guns. They want to try to control your ability to buy a gun, to maintain ownership of that gun. That's the purpose of this bill. Let's not beat around the bush, because I was just looking through some of the lists of California Democrats and all these people, and just like even in LA County. So I was looking to see, I was like, what positions are open in LA County that are electable that maybe I could run for and sneak in, like something that somebody's ignoring, overlooking, and I'll just get in there. It's just wreak havoc. But all the things are run by Democrats here. It's a mono party. So it's literally, I mean, you could find maybe 10 Republicans in the whole place and no libertarians. These people do not have the best interests of gun owners at heart, nor the populace. They just hate gun owners, period. So this bill is designed to force people out of their own pocket to take these courses. And I think it's something like 10 hours. And, these are not cheap. These courses cost hundreds of dollars. You have to take off work. You have to find time out of your schedule. They know it's a massive imposition and a massive inconvenience. That's why they're doing it. There's no other reason. This is not for safety. This is not for any reason other than to try to get people to default on what they're required to do if this passes legally. And I'm sure it will pass because these people are fucking cocksuckers. They want you to default, kind of like, defaulting on a loan so they can repossess your house. They want you to default on your obligations legally so that they can take your guns. That's what that's for. So just pointing that out to everybody. The second thing is Gavin Newsom, one of the biggest pieces of garbage that's ever existed. Nepo baby, a lying snake slithering in his own feces. Gavin Newsom has been in control of California for, I think, over 10 years now. And he had come from San Francisco, where he was part and parcel in ruining that city and causing its economic and cultural collapse, where it's just a den of, open drug use, of people, literally having an app that tells you where feces is in the streets, that people, it's a government app. You report where human shit is in the street so they can clean it up for you. That he went somehow parlayed because, California is full of progressive idiots that don't understand, cause and effect. Somehow has been able to stay in power in California. Throughout that time he's been in California, we've seen a 50% raise in homelessness. Despite the fact that Gavin Newsom has been talking about his breakthrough plans for homelessness, the fact that we've spent something like $400 billion on homelessness, and this is including building encampments that cost an unbelievable amount of money, something like apartments for the homeless that cost $400,000 per apartment to construct, all of these failed, miserable, stupid ideas. And let's not forget about the fact that there are all these hand in the cookie jar type of organizations that have sprung up, some of which, by the way, of course, are run by friends and family members of government employees and elected officials in our very government, that are completely unaccountable. They can't find where the money went. There's actually an undergoing investigation right now in LA County to find out where billions of dollars have gone, and have established what? Oh, the perfect area for homelessness. It's like the South Park episode where they have the homeless living right by Matt's house in Santa Monica, friend to the homeless. Yes, you give out free drugs, free food, free shelter, which they don't use, by the way. The shelters for the homeless are, for the most part, used to store their shit. Open camping, open drug use, no penalties for shoplifting. All of this shit combines to make the perfect environment for people to be complete fuck ups, no penalties, no repercussions, and just given everything at an incredible cost to people that live here, at a detriment to property values, at a detriment to your very ability to live, because a lot of these people are completely off the rocker. They're either on drugs, they're on psychotics, they're completely insane. When you walk around, you'll see these people talking to themselves, shaking and shuddering. Horrible. So what has Gavin Newsom done during COVID? Let's not forget also the fact that the Supreme Court, which this has just been reversed, thank God, Supreme Court just ruled that no, you do not have a right to just fucking set up your camp and camp everywhere and anywhere in the city, and cities do not have an obligation to let you do that. So Gavin Newsom, who had been a loud and vocal advocate for, going straight to hell with the homeless, now has put out a brand new plan saying that, well, now we have to clean up the homeless. We got to get rid of these encampments. And from a state level, I say no more. Great. Complete reverse course. Now, let's not forget he's reverse course on a lot of things recently. I talked about Bill Maher in his show earlier. Gavin Newsom reverse course on the entire trans issue, pretending that somehow he never thought this was a good idea, even though Gavin Newsom had been in favor of, and I think eventually vetoed it because he was trying to run for president, a bill that would have, actually, no, it did pass. In California, there's a bill that essentially says schools cannot tell parents if their children decide to go by a different name and are essentially transitioning in school. It's one of the worst ideas I've ever heard in my life. It's dangerous. And if the left's to be believed, and I've said this on the show before, so pardon me, but I think it's an excellent point on the hypocrisy, idiocy, and lies of the left. We were told for a good decade that trans children, if they weren't allowed, if they weren't encouraged to switch genders at the age of 7, well, they were going to kill themselves. The line that was delivered repetitively was, would you rather have a living son or a dead daughter, right? Or vice versa. This turned out to be a lie. They did studies, and after this initial bullshit study, activist study claiming this, several other studies were done showing that that's completely untrue. But the Democrats continue to parrot that line. Your kid's going to kill themselves if they're not allowed to transition. Okay, well, if these kids are suicidal and you're not telling the parents about it, isn't that risking a child's life? Because the parents need to know if they're going to, either to support the child, to help them transition, right? Because if you're not telling the parent and this kid's not transitioning and getting the medical care and the assistance, aren't they going to kill themselves? And isn't this a risk to the child? Of course, it's all based on lies, which is why all this breaks down and why this bill doesn't make any sense and why they're completely comfortable with the bill not making sense, because they know it's bullshit. Anyway, Gavin Newsom is rolling out this new plan to combat the homelessness that he personally caused, by telling people that now the encampments have to be removed, but, very humanely, and you have to give them every opportunity to shelter. Now, I can tell you, as I said before, these people don't want to shelter. Providing housing, and Michael Schellenberger has been very good on this, by the way. Providing housing is not the cure to homelessness. I just saw a recent article in Forbes that really pissed me off about, another guy who made a little tiny house. This is going to cure homelessness. The fuck it is. That little tiny house that Forbes just wrote up glowingly in a masturbatory article is still going to cost, $50,000 per. And guess what's going to happen? It's going to get filled with drug needles and shit and garbage and trash and shopping carts. And they're not going to go in it because they don't want to, because they're not mentally stable, because that's not what these homeless do. That's not what they're programmed to do. It's not what they want in life. They want to go shoot up, or they want to ramble around, or they just want to be fucking crazy. They don't use the housing. The housing's not the problem. This is a problem of mental health, drug abuse, entitlement, and people being, I got the exact name for it, supporters, enablers. That's the word, enablers. This is a city. This is a state of enabling the worst possible behavior with zero repercussions. And all of a sudden, Gavin Newsom wants to crack down on it in a kind way. What could be the reason? Oh, that's right. Because he wants to run for president. As of right now, Kamala Harris is hilariously somehow still in the lead. They just did another poll, and Kamala Harris, maybe it's because of name recognition. I don't know. Kamala Harris is still in the lead. And all I know is either Kamala's got to stop drinking or get better cocaine the next time she runs, if she really wants to make a shot at this. But, Kamala Harris is also leading the polls to be the next California governor. So maybe Gavin Newsom says, all right, Kamala, you be governor. I'll go run for president and spread my snake oil all over this country. Skeet my snake oil everywhere. And we'll call it a day. And I think that's exactly what's the plan. I think that behind the scenes, that is what the Democratic machine is working towards. So time to clean up California, just like he did in San Francisco when Xi Jinping came to visit. They rounded up all the homeless. They put them in the bunker for a few days. And then when Xi Jinping left, here you go. Go shit on the streets and shoot up your drugs again, homeless. Have fun. What a snake. All right, last thing, guys, then we'll wrap this up. Authoritarianism in Spain is alive and well. They have put into effect cash limits on what people can remove from their banks. People that have money in the Spanish banking system are no longer permitted to take out cash over $3,000 without government permission. Now, here in the U.S., you'll get flagged if you take out, I think, over 10,000 or put in more than 10,000. Now, the origin of this came because they claimed that money laundering was the reason, because of mafia and, all that kind of thing. That's why they had to do it, right? For the safety of us, because that's what's really important. These small mafia families making $10,000 withdrawals and deposits is reason to create an entire banking system where citizens get flagged and investigated for putting $10,000 in and out of a bank account. Yeah, it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Sure. In Spain, they've taken that to a new level, but using the exact same tried and true bullshit excuse of money laundering. Because now, if you get $3,000 in and out, they can turn your bank account off. They can investigate you. They can make sure that you are doing the up and up from a criminal perspective. But what really interests me here is that they're introducing this this measure to curb people being able to access their own money, by the way. Their own money. Can't take it out. And this is before the advent of CBDCs, the centrally backed digital currencies. I think the writing's on the wall here. And Europe is for sure going to be the first to fall when it comes to CBDCs. I don't even think that's a question. Europe's embraced authoritarianism in every possible way, shape, and form. And I mean, it's a fight for the basic survival of Europe at this point. Not only from that perspective, from the authoritarian perspective, but also from the fact that they have so many Muslim refugees there now. And I talked about this on another show, who literally say, we are going to take over your country. We're going to outbreed you. I could take 4 wives and make 6 kids for each wife. This is not me saying it. This is literally like on a video of like a Muslim cleric I saw. Europe, I think, is going to be toast soon. And the European Union is for sure going to break up, because you're going to have places like Turkey. You're going to have places like Italy. You're going to have places like, I think even, Ireland. They're eventually going to be like, we're done here. We're out. And I think that's the only way they're going to survive, because they're going to be going down this path. And CBDCs, I would say, if I had to take a guess, I don't know for sure. If I had to take a guess, I'd say within 5 years will be introduced in the UK. And it ties in perfectly, even though we've seen the abandonment of the climate issue to a large extent, because again, it was nonsense. And Antarctic ice is at a 100-year high right now, despite the fact they said it was all going to be gone. There's a reason, by the way, all of these articles only talk about Arctic ice and not Antarctic ice or complete ice on the global stage, because Antarctica is massively gaining ice. And of course, they don't want to talk about that. But I'll recall that now King Charles, when talking about climate, and this was a couple of years ago, it said that, it's a war. It's a war on climate. And let's not forget that during war, you're able to nationalize, you are able to control, you're able to limit, you're able to dictate how much and what quantities people can buy of X, Y, and Z, and you can control what people buy and where. And CBDCs is a prime example of how the war on climate is going to influence that, because not only will they control what you can buy, how much meat, how much gasoline, how much heating fuel for your house, how much, whatever, you name it, CBDCs will in fact be weaponized against people in that manner. And when you look at places like the UK, which already tried to debank Nigel Farage, who now is leading, what is it? I think the Reform Party is the party, and it's similar to the Germany's AfD, which they're trying to make illegal. The Reform Party, I think, has become the most popular, one of the most popular parties in the UK. I think it's overtaken maybe Labour or what are the other one? Labour and whatever the other one is. My brain's still not working. But point being, when you've already got debanking as a concept that we've seen put into play. I mean, Kanye West and his Hail Hitler song, he complains about being debanked in that. How he has all this money and he can't get to his money because he's been debanked. Well, CBDCs are coming, and that is the design, to be able to do that at a whim. So never let it happen, folks. All right, that's it for me. Sorry for a little bit of an incoherent show there. Yeah, I thought I got a decent sleep last night. I don't know. Maybe I didn't. My stupid ass dog, Hank, who, remind me next show, I'll tell you the story about how he ripped open my ball sack and he's still alive. Fucking dog. 4:00 in the morning, barking, waking us up. And we just got a zap collar to make him stop doing it. But I think my brain is eventually just worn down from that. Regardless, join us, guys, on Patreon, patreon.com/Lions of Liberty, lionsofliberty.locals.com. We're going to have more bonus content coming from me, from the whole gang. Of course, Meme Wars is now going to be behind the paywall there. Our look at memes across the internet and topical humor. Brian Nichols is going to be posting some of his original content. Don't forget, his show is debuting tomorrow here on the Lions of Liberty Network. We're everywhere you want to be. All right, that's it. From me, Brian McWilliams, from the Lions of Liberty Network. And from Mean Age Daydream, keep those electric eyes on me, babe, and keep that ray gun to my head. I'm going to go out on the Politics news show. Politics, guys. This is that show. Make sure you catch it. It's going to have its own feed rolling out very soon as well. But I dig this song. We'll go out on that later.